Welcome to Night Chemistry, your candlelit refuge beneath the stars. Here we mix gentle science with soothing storytelling to guide you into restful sleep. Tonight's journey is a detective mystery tale entitled The Case of the Emerald Flame. Find a comfortable position, soften your breath, and let your thoughts dissolve like mist in moonlight. Intro: a flicker in the dark. The night was unusually quiet, wrapped in an eerie silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by the gentle evening breeze. On the tranquil grounds of Eldermore University, shadows danced beneath dim lamplights, painting strange shapes across the brick walls of the chemistry building. It was past midnight when a sudden flash, a burst of vivid emerald, pierced the darkness from one of the laboratory windows. Within moments, the calm was shattered by the wail of sirens. Firefighters arrived swiftly, their urgent shouts echoing to the previously peaceful campus. Flames roared hungrily inside Lab 214, casting a peculiar green hue against the darkened sky. The firefighters battled the strange blaze until, finally, only the smoldering remnants of experiments and shattered glassware remained. It was then that the first responders discovered the lifeless body. Young Daniel Evans, a promising doctoral student known for his groundbreaking research, lay motionless on the laboratory floor, a look of surprise frozen permanently on his youthful face. Around him, trails of an unusual green residue glistened ominously in the subdued lighting, winding chaotically like the brushstrokes of an abstract painting. Detective Arthur Langley, renowned for his precise analytical mind and extensive knowledge of chemistry, was summoned immediately. As Langley stepped into the scorched lab, the lingering scent of chemicals and smoke filled his lungs, sharpening his senses. His gaze narrowed to the emerald residue that shimmered subtly in the dim light, a familiar yet unnerving clue. He knew this was no ordinary fire. It was deliberate, cunningly planned, and chemically sophisticated. Kneeling beside Daniel's still form, Langley carefully examined the residue, already suspecting what his scientific analysis would soon confirm. Boron, a single element that, when ignited, burned with a distinctive emerald flame. Langley's pulse quickened. This wasn't merely a tragic accident. It was a carefully executed crime, one that required a deep understanding of chemistry. Someone at Eldermore University was hiding a dark secret, willing to kill to protect it. Detective Langley stood up slowly, his determination solidifying like a precipitate settling in a clear solution. The chase had begun. In the quiet darkness of the ruined laboratory, the emerald residue glowed faintly, as if mocking it with its silent, vivid secret. Chapter 1: Green Flames. Detective Arthur Langley arrived at Eldermore University just as dawn painted the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. The university campus, usually buzzing with academic life, was eerily subdued, hushed whispers replacing the usual chatter. Langley approached Lab 214, now cordoned off with yellow caution tape, the smell of smoke and chemical residues still lingering heavily in the morning air. Langley surveyed the damage carefully, his analytical eyes scanning the burnt remnants of what had been a state-of-the-art chemistry lab. Broken glass crunched beneath his feet as he stepped cautiously forward, moving closer to where Daniel Evans had been found. His gaze fixated once more on the unusual green residue marking the floor, the walls, even the remaining equipment. Detective Langley, a familiar voice called from behind. Turning, Langley recognized Professor Jonathan Hartfield, head of the chemistry department, approaching with a nervous stride. Professor Hartfield. Langley nodded curtly, his eyes carefully watching the professor's face for subtle signs of distress. A tragedy indeed. Tell me, what exactly was young Daniel working on? Professor Hartfield hesitated briefly, adjusting his glasses. He was exploring new chemical reactions involving boron compounds. A remarkable student. Truly innovative research. We were close to a major breakthrough. Langley caught a flicker of unease in the professor's eyes. And who else had access to this lab? Besides Daniel and myself, only my assistant, Emily Warren. She helped Daniel extensively, Hartfield replied, quickly glancing away. Where's Emily now? Langley inquired sharply. I haven't seen her since yesterday afternoon, Hartfield stammered. Perhaps she's in shock. Poor girl. She and Daniel were close colleagues. Langley nodded slowly, absorbing the details. I'll need to speak with her as soon as possible. For now, Professor, I'd appreciate full access to Daniel's research notes and any records of lab activity. Hartfield nodded nervously, hurrying away to gather the requested documents. Left alone again, Langley carefully approached the spot where Daniel's body had been discovered. Kneeling down, he pulled out a small vial and carefully collected samples of the emerald residue. Boron, he knew, burned green, but something about the intensity and spread of the fire seemed off. Deliberate, manipulated. Langley rose, determination sharpening his features. He had learned long ago that behind every chemical reaction, there lay motive, method, and human intent. Someone had wielded chemistry not to discover, but to destroy. Walking slowly from the devastated lab, Detective Langley felt the heavy weight of impending truths pressing upon him. He was determined to uncover every secret hidden within the emerald flames. Langley decided to interview the campus security guards next, hoping they could provide insight into any unusual activity that night. The guard on duty, a young man named Kyle Simmons, seemed anxious but cooperative. I was at my station all night, Kyle said, shifting his weight nervously. I didn't notice anything until the alarms went off. Then everything went crazy. Langley pressed further. You saw no one entering or leaving the building earlier? Kyle hesitated. Well, Professor Hartfield did leave quite late, around 11:30 p.m. And Emily Warren, she left even later, maybe around midnight. Langley's interest sharpened. Did they appear agitated or concerned in any way? Not exactly, Kyle admitted. But Emily seemed upset, maybe crying. It was dark, but I'm pretty sure she was distressed. Thanking Kyle, Langley moved swiftly to Emily Warren's dormitory, his mind piecing together the puzzle with growing clarity. Arriving at the dormitory, he knocked firmly on her door. After a moment, it opened slightly, revealing Emily's pale, tear-streaked face. Miss Warren, Langley said gently, I'm sorry for your loss. Could we talk for a moment? Emily nodded shakily and allowed him inside. Her room was neatly organized, textbooks and notes piled meticulously on her desk. Langley's eyes caught sight of a photograph pinned to her bulletin board. Emily and Daniel, smiling warmly in lab coats. We were so close to completing the research, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel was excited, hopeful. This breakthrough meant everything to him. Langley observed her carefully. Did Daniel mention any concerns or conflicts recently? Emily hesitated, her fingers nervously tracing patterns on the desk. He argued with Professor Hartfield frequently. Hartfield wanted control over Daniel's findings. He was very insistent, even threatening. This revelation deepened Langley's suspicions. Do you believe Hartfield capable of harming Daniel? Emily shuddered slightly. I don't know, but he was desperate to secure funding. Daniel's work would have guaranteed that. Hartfield stood to gain immensely. Langley reassured Emily briefly before leaving. His next stop was the campus archives, where he hoped to uncover deeper insights into Hartfield's past and his financial ties. At the archives, Langley meticulously combed through years of records. Hours passed, daylight fading into evening as he pieced together a troubling pattern. Professor Hartfield had faced repeated rejections for grants until recently, when a mysterious investor began funding his laboratory. The investor was anonymous, cloaked behind layers of corporate secrecy. Langley leaned back, massaging his temples thoughtfully. The web of intrigue around Daniel's research was thicker and more dangerous than he had anticipated. Boron's emerald flame had ignited far more than just a laboratory. It had illuminated hidden truths that someone desperately wanted to remain concealed. The detective knew he had only scratched the surface, and the clock was ticking rapidly toward his next move. Chapter 2, Spectral Secrets. Detective Arthur Langley started his morning at Eldermore University's Chemical Analysis Laboratory, located in an adjacent building untouched by the recent fire. The room hummed softly with the sound of instruments, a comforting familiarity to Langley. He carefully prepared the emerald residue for spectroscopic analysis, his mind methodically processing the clues gathered so far. As the spectrometer ran its course, Langley reviewed Daniel's research notes, meticulously collected from Professor Hartfield. The young researcher had clearly been diligent, documenting his experiments thoroughly. Daniel's journal revealed excitement about an unexpected reaction involving boron compounds, specifically mentioning an unusual catalyst capable of accelerating reactions far beyond expected limits. Daniel's notes hinted at applications that could revolutionize multiple industries, from pharmaceuticals to aerospace. The spectrometer beeped, bringing Langley's attention back to the analysis. He carefully reviewed the results, confirming his suspicion. High concentrations of boron mixed with an unknown catalyst. The composition was indeed deliberate and unusual, a mixture never casually combined in a university lab without specific purpose. Leaving the lab, Langley decided to revisit Professor Hartfield. Arriving at his office, he knocked sharply, entering without waiting for a reply. Hartfield looked up startled, quickly closing a folder on his desk. "Detective, can I help you?" Hartfield asked, his tone guarded. "I have some questions regarding Daniel's recent experiments," Langley replied calmly, observing the professor's unease. Hartfield shifted uncomfortably. "Of course. What specifically?" Daniel's notes indicate he discovered a significant catalytic process. "Do you know anything about this catalyst?" Hartfield hesitated briefly. Daniel was secretive about certain aspects of his research. He was protective of his findings. "Yet you stood to benefit greatly from this discovery," Langley countered sharply. Why would Daniel hide critical findings from his mentor? Hartfield sighed, his shoulders dropping slightly. "We disagreed about the direction of the research. Daniel wanted the discovery shared openly for scientific advancement. I saw it as a way to secure substantial funding. Yes, we argued, but I would never harm him." Langley noticed Hartfield nervously glancing at the closed folder. "May I see what you were reviewing?" Hartfield reluctantly opened it, revealing financial documents. Langley quickly noted the name of the anonymous investor previously uncovered. "Who exactly is this investor, Professor?" "I honestly don't know," Hartfield admitted. "They approached me indirectly, through a corporate representative." Langley narrowed his eyes. "I'll need all correspondence relating to this funding." Hartfield nodded resignedly. As Langley exited, he sensed he was getting closer to truth, but more importantly, the motive behind Daniel's tragic end. Chapter 3. Hidden Formulas. Returning to the police station. Langley carefully spread Daniel's notes across his desk, meticulously piecing together the young researcher's last days. Among the scattered pages, he found repeated references to an off-campus laboratory. Curious, he cross-referenced this detail with Emily Warren's statements, realizing she hadn't mentioned such a place. Determined, Langley sought Emily again. He found her in a quiet corner of the university library, poring over textbooks, visibly exhausted. "Miss Warren," Langley approached softly. "I have further questions. Daniel mentioned an off-campus lab. Do you know anything about it?" Emily hesitated, anxiety flickering in her eyes. "He was using a private lab to complete sensitive experiments. Daniel didn't trust anyone at Eldermore with the full details." "Why didn't you mention this earlier?" Langley asked gently. Emily looked down, her voice shaking. "Daniel made me promise to keep it secret. He believed someone was trying to steal his work. He was scared, Detective." Langley pressed further. "Where's this lab?" After brief hesitation, Emily handed Langley an address scribbled hastily in Daniel's handwriting. "Be careful," she warned quietly. Daniel thought he was being watched. Arriving at the location, an unassuming building in a quiet industrial area, Langley carefully approached the entrance, senses alert. Inside, The lab was surprisingly sophisticated, filled with advanced equipment. Clearly, Daniel had significant financial backing. Langley methodically searched the lab, discovering additional detailed notes hidden in a locked drawer. Among these papers, he found a chemical formula highlighted prominently with urgent annotations. Daniel had clearly intended to protect this discovery at all costs. Suddenly, Langley heard faint footsteps behind him. He turned swiftly, catching sight of a shadowy figure fleeing through a rear exit. Langley gave chase, but the intruder vanished quickly into the maze of alleys outside. Returning breathlessly to the lab, Langley realized he had uncovered something far more significant and dangerous than he initially anticipated. Daniel's research held immense value, enough to incite murder. Whoever had just fled had likely intended to retrieve or destroy this very evidence. Determined not to lose his advantage, Langley gathered every document, securing them carefully before returning to the police station. He knew now that the threat was imminent. He quickly arranged security measures around Emily Warren, understanding she could be the next target. Late that night, as Langley meticulously reviewed the newly discovered documents, connections became clearer. The anonymous investor, the hidden lab, the revolutionary chemical formula, each piece fell ominously into place. Langley knew his adversary was cunning and ruthless, willing to destroy anyone obstructing their ambitions. Daniel's murder was merely the opening act of a much darker drama unfolding at Eldermore University. The detective braced himself, aware the true confrontation lay ahead, wrapped in shadows and chemical mysteries yet to be unraveled. Chapter 4: Shadows of the Past. Detective Arthur Langley rose early, his mind churning with unanswered questions from the previous night's discoveries. He decided to track down the former laboratory assistant Daniel had briefly mentioned in his notes, a man named Gregory Mason. Records indicated Mason lived on the outskirts of town in a modest apartment complex. Langley knocked firmly on the weathered door, listening as footsteps approached. The door opened cautiously, revealing Gregory Mason, visibly aged by hardship, his eyes wary. "Mason, Detective Langley." Langley introduced himself. "I'm investigating Daniel Evans' death. Can we talk?" Mason hesitated before nodding reluctantly. He led Langley into a cramped living room cluttered with papers, books, and chemical journals. "I heard about Daniel," Mason began softly, his voice carrying a note of sorrow. He was brilliant and genuinely decent. "What happened?" "Someone deliberately set fire to his lab," Langley explained calmly. "We believe his research made him a target." "Do you know anything about Daniel's recent experiments involving boron?" Mason nodded slowly. "He reached out to me a few months ago. He suspected Professor Hartfield was sabotaging his work. Daniel was onto something big, revolutionary, but Hartfield wanted control. Daniel was terrified, convinced someone was following him. Did Daniel share specifics of his discovery?" Langley asked. Mason hesitated, looking troubled, only in vague terms. Something involving accelerated chemical reactions with immense commercial potential. He was cautious with details, afraid they'd fall into the wrong hands. Langley observed Mason's demeanor carefully. "Why did you leave Eldermore? Conflict with Hartfield?" Mason admitted bitterly. "He accused me falsely of misconduct when I questioned his methods. Destroyed my career. Daniel tried defending me, but Hartfield had too much influence." Langley thanked Mason, departing with a clearer picture. Hartfield appeared increasingly suspicious, but Langley needed concrete proof. On a hunch, Langley returned to campus, quietly requesting campus security records from the night of the fire. Hours later, meticulously reviewing video surveillance, Langley spotted something crucial. Around midnight, Professor Hartfield had entered the chemistry building carrying a container marked hazardous. More importantly, he had left empty-handed. Langley quickly secured the footage as evidence. Later that afternoon, Langley revisited Hartfield's office, confronting him directly with the surveillance footage. Hartfield visibly paled upon seeing himself clearly on camera. "Care to explain?" Langley pressed firmly. Hartfield stammered defensively. It's not what it looks like. I was merely disposing of contaminated chemicals. Interesting choice of timing, Langley replied sharply. I strongly advise you not to leave town, Professor. As Langley exited, he felt the weight of the case deepening. He knew he was getting dangerously close to exposing the truth, close enough that someone might try to silence him permanently. Chapter 5, Catalyst. The following morning, Langley received an urgent call from Emily Warren. Her voice trembled, clearly shaken. Detective, someone broke into my dorm room last night. I think they were looking for something Daniel left behind. Langley rushed to the dormitory, finding Emily visibly distressed but unharmed. Her room had been ransacked, papers scattered chaotically. What would they want? Langley asked urgently. Emily hesitated, then handed Langley a small encrypted USB drive. Daniel asked me to hide this. I never mentioned it before. He said it was vital to his work. Langley secured the drive carefully. Stay with friends or family. Emily, you're in danger now. Returning swiftly to the police station, Langley enlisted forensic tech experts to decrypt the USB. After tense hours, they accessed its contents. Detailed research, chemical formulas, and correspondence implicating Professor Hartfield in unethical practices, including selling preliminary data to an unknown investor. Langley connected the evidence carefully, realizing Hartfield was merely a pawn controlled by larger interests. The anonymous investor's identity remained elusive, hidden behind corporate facades. Langley understood this extended far beyond university walls. Late that evening, while deep in thought at his desk, Langley received an anonymous message warning him to drop the case immediately, rather than intimidating him. It strengthened his resolve. Langley carefully documented every piece of evidence, aware he might be targeted next. He methodically prepared contingencies, securing copies of evidence off-site and arranging covert surveillance of key figures, especially Professor Hartfield. Meanwhile, Emily contacted Langley again, recalling something important Daniel had mentioned in passing: a warehouse owned by the investor, possibly used for clandestine experiments. Armed with new urgency, Langley coordinated a discreet police operation, preparing to inspect the facility. Under the cover of night, Langley and a small team approached the warehouse cautiously. The entrance was alarmed, but they bypassed it silently, entering a vast interior filled with sophisticated equipment, chemicals, and research clearly linked to Daniel's findings. Langley quickly documented everything, photographing documents, chemical labels, and computer screens. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the warehouse, indicating they were no longer alone. Drawing his weapon carefully, Langley signaled his team to remain silent, eyes scanning the shadows intently. Moments later, figures emerged from darkness, armed guards confronting them directly. "Police, drop your weapons." Langley commanded decisively. The warehouse erupted into chaos. In the ensuing struggle, Langley secured critical evidence, barely escaping as backup arrived. The guards were detained, offering no immediate information, but Langley knew he'd uncovered a critical piece of the puzzle. Returning exhausted but determined, Langley analyzed the retrieved documents and computers. They revealed a disturbing plot. Daniel's discovery had attracted powerful interests eager to weaponize the catalytic reaction. Langley realized the stakes were higher than he'd imagined. He braced himself, aware the ultimate confrontation awaited, determined more than ever to unravel the mystery behind the emerald flames. Chapter 6, Chemical Bonds. Detective Arthur Langley knew the next step was critical, revealing the identity of the anonymous investor and exposing their intentions. Hours spent poring over financial records and digital communications finally led him to a crucial breakthrough. A hidden email correspondence mentioned a meeting between Professor Hartfield and the investor scheduled at an exclusive downtown hotel. Langley arranged discreet surveillance, arriving at the hotel early, blending effortlessly among the patrons in the lobby. Soon, Hartfield arrived, visibly anxious, swiftly escorted by hotel staff to a private conference room. Langley, watching from a distance, observed the arrival of a distinguished-looking man whose demeanor suggested authority and power. Through careful maneuvering, Langley secured a position outside the room, listening intently. Their voices were low but clear. "Hartfield, the situation is unacceptable." The investor's voice was firm. "Your negligence allowed Detective Langley to uncover too much. We can no longer risk exposure." "I did everything you asked," Hartfield protested desperately. "Daniel was an unfortunate accident. I never intended." "Enough," the investor snapped. "Your usefulness is over. Your involvement with Daniel's death makes you a liability." Langley's heart quickened at the admission. He swiftly coordinated backup, determined to apprehend both men immediately. Moments later, police officers entered decisively, arresting Hartfield and the mysterious investor, revealed as corporate magnate Robert Everly, notorious for questionable business dealings. Interrogation hours later confirmed Langley's suspicions. Everly had intended to weaponize Daniel's catalytic process, selling it to the highest bidder on the black market. Hartfield, driven by desperation and ambition, had unwittingly facilitated Everly's dark agenda. Satisfied yet somber, Langley prepared a comprehensive report, ensuring justice for Daniel and protecting Emily from further threats. However, he knew the case was far from over. One vital question remained unanswered. How had Everly known so much about Daniel's groundbreaking research? Chapter 7. Truth in Flames. Days later, a mysterious package arrived at Langley's office, anonymously addressed. Inside was a detailed journal, carefully penned by Daniel himself. The journal provided astonishing revelations. Daniel had grown suspicious early on, carefully documenting every encounter and meeting. The notes revealed a mole within Eldermore University who had leaked sensitive information directly to Everly. Langley meticulously cross-referenced the journal entries, piecing together the identity of the mole. To his dismay, it was Gregory Mason, Daniel's former trusted colleague. Confronting Mason once more, Langley saw a broken man consumed by guilt. Mason admitted to providing information to Everly, blinded by promises of restored reputation and financial stability. "I never intended for Daniel to be harmed," Mason confessed tearfully. "He trusted me, and I betrayed him." Langley understood Mason's remorse was genuine. Nevertheless, justice demanded accountability, and Mason willingly surrendered himself, determined to atone. With the case finally closed, Langley visited Emily Warren, bringing her Daniel's journal and offering comfort. She accepted it with quiet gratitude, tears silently tracing her cheeks. "Daniel always believed his research would change the world positively," she whispered. "I'll ensure his legacy survives." Weeks later, Eldermore University announced a scholarship in Daniel Evans' honor, dedicated to supporting brilliant young scientists committed to ethical research. Langley attended the dedication ceremony quietly, reflecting on the case's deeper lessons. As he left the ceremony, walking beneath softly glowing street lamps, Langley contemplated the emerald flames that had begun this journey. Daniel's discovery had ignited ambitions, greed, betrayal, and ultimately redemption. Langley knew better than most that science was a powerful force, capable of illuminating the darkest corners or engulfing lives in destructive flames. Yet, as he walked away, he felt an unexpected sense of peace. Daniel's tragic end had sparked something greater: truth, justice, and a renewed commitment to protecting the integrity of scientific exploration. Under quiet embrace of the evening sky, Detective Arthur Langley turned his thoughts to the next case, prepared as always to face whatever mysteries lay ahead. Thank you for wandering through the quiet corridors of night chemistry. May the questions of the day dissolve like salt in still water, and may peaceful dreams form their own gentle equations. Until our next nocturnal experiment, sleep well and good night.